sermon this afternoon is on Job 28, and in the last verse of this chapter, you could say that the Lord is giving us the application of all that is in this chapter when he speaks to us. Verse 28, and he said to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil is understanding. Beloved congregation of our Lord Jesus Christ, brothers and sisters, Job 28 is a bit of a different chapter in this book. You notice there's no Job who is lamenting here about his suffering, his pain, the injustice that he feels. Nor are there friends who are accusing Job of hypocrisy. In fact, the friends are finished. Chapter 25 is the last speech. It's a very short one by Bildad. And that's it for the friends. These chapters, in which we find also chapter 28, are, you can say, the concluding remarks of Job. It's as if in a court case, you sum up the case. And so Job is also in these chapters 26 through 31, you could say, making his closing arguments. In 31, the last verse of 31, 40, it says, the words of Job are ended. He will say more yet in this book, but it's kind of the close of this statement where he restates his position, and we've seen already what that position is. But also within this closing statement of Job, 26 through 31, this chapter is different because it is a song. It's poetry. It's a beautiful song. And the theme of the song is wisdom. Verse 12, where shall wisdom be found? Verse 20, from where then does wisdom come? And then comes the answer in 23, God understands the way to it, and he knows its place. It's a song about wisdom. And as a song about wisdom, you could say that chapter 28 is like a moment of pause in this book, a moment of reflection. Because Job and his friends have made their positions very clear. But have they been able to solve the problem? No. They have accused each other of all kinds of things. They have also accused each other of pretending to have wisdom. Chapter 12, verse 2. Job says, no doubt you are the people, and wisdom will die with you. You think you're so wise, and when you're gone, there will be no more wisdom left, implying you think you got the answer. And they, in chapter 15, verse 8, say to Job, have you listened in the counsel of God? Do you limit wisdom to yourself? So they've made accusations in that way, but the friends and Job have not been able to answer the question, why would God do this to Job, who is a blameless man? And this chapter gives kind of a pause in this, looking back, and in a way saying, look, they have not been able to solve the problem, the question. Now, Job has also indicated that he wants to lay the matter before the Lord, and in a way he's also making his closing arguments to the Lord. And in that way, 28 also looks ahead. What is needed to be able to lay this before the Lord? And so chapter 28 looks back, chapter 28 looks ahead, and it deals with this central question: what is wisdom? How do you get it? And the answer is in verse 28, and there's also the theme for the sermon: behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. The fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And we'll deal with that by looking at the three parts of this song, of this chapter. The first part is verse 1 through 11. Then we'll look at verses 12 through 22. And then we'll look at the third part, the answer, 23 through 27. 28 is not anymore part of the song, but it's still part of the answer, of course. So 23 through 28. But we start off with that first part, verses 1 through 11. And in this part, this poem describes mining and how people are able to find precious metals and jewels. But in this poem, three lines, you can say, are intertwined. The first line in this first stanza is that there are things in life that are very valuable and you want them. It speaks about silver, gold, iron, copper. Those are all things that are valuables, are important for life. It speaks about jewels, sapphires, again, very valuable. So there are things in life that are valuable. But then the second line that goes through it is that these valuable things are difficult to obtain. Silver and gold, you have to dig very deep. It's not on the surface. Iron and copper, you have to dig into the hills. The precious stones, deep in the ground, away from where we live, in darkness, it says. Even the birds of prey with their keen eyes, and the falcon with its keen eye, cannot see the copper, the gold, the sapphires. And the animals, they don't walk on it. It doesn't get, the produce is not there on the surface of the ground. Verse 8 and verse 7. So there are things that are valuable. They're difficult to obtain. And then the third line here is, however, man has the ability to get to them, to take these things out of the ground. It requires a lot of hard work. It requires great skill, but because it is so valuable, they do it. The silver and the gold and the copper and the iron and the sapphires and the diamonds. So man is able to do something very special. To take these valuable things that are not visible, are deep in the ground, to bring them to the surface, and thus to enjoy them. The poet had a good understanding of mining at that day. It speaks about opening shafts in the valley, far away, deep in the ground, swinging to and fro when they were swinging on little boards, on ropes perhaps. It speaks about cutting off channels in the rocks, damming up streams so that they won't trickle. It's all things related to mining. Beautiful how it is described. But it shows how difficult and how dangerous the work is. However, it is worth it. Verse 4, he opened shafts in the valley away from where anyone lives. They are forgotten by travelers. They hang in the air far away from mankind. Verse 9, Man puts his hand to the flinty rock and overturns mountains by the roots. He cuts out channels in the rocks. His eye sees every precious thing. What it tells us, brothers and sisters, is that the Bible shows that God has created man with an amazing ability and with skills. That man is able to do what the animals cannot do, and that man is able to take these treasures out of the earth, far away from where we live. And indeed, don't we all agree? Man is able to do amazing things. Or God has given man amazing abilities and capabilities. And that was already in the time of Job. And that is also in our time. Things that man is able to do today, previous generations would never have even thought about it, that it was possible. And now it is possible. Discoveries, things that we can do. Yes, it is true, man who does this in our world, in our society, doesn't recognize God as the giver of all these gifts, and they do not use these gifts to glorify him, but they rather glorify themselves. Look what I can do with my technology, with my science, with my knowledge. But yet as believers, we have to also say, as Psalm 8 says, what an amazing capabilities God has given to man. That's the first part. Man is able to do these things. And that leads to the second part of this poem, verses 12 through 22. For now the poet applies what he saw, what he said in this first part, to one matter: wisdom. You see, the point was, something is very valuable, it's worth mining, and man has the ability to do that. Now that is applied to wisdom. And the poem says, wisdom too is very precious, even more precious than gold and copper and sapphires. Verse 15, it cannot be bought for gold, and silver cannot be weighed as its price. Verse 16, it cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, in precious onyx or sapphire. Gold and glass cannot equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewels of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or of crystal. The price of wisdom is above pearls. The topaz of Ethiopia cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. Wisdom far exceeds anything that is precious in this world. Can we find it? Because it is so valuable, even more than gold and silver, can we mine it as we mine gold? Can we find it as we dig for jewels? Is man able, does he have the abilities to find wisdom? And there the answer is a simple no. No. Man has amazing capabilities. And man can go at great length to mine something that is very precious. But when it comes to wisdom, man's wisdom is of no use. Man cannot do it. Wisdom is inaccessible for humans. Verse 13 and 14. Man does not know its worth. It is not found in the land of the living. The deep says, it is not in me. The sea says, it is not with me. And it's taken up again in verse 21. Wisdom is hidden from the eye of all living, concealed from the birds of the air. Abaddon and death, the underworld. They say we have heard a rumor of it with our ears, and it means it's not there. So that means that wisdom is something you cannot buy. It's impossible to go to a store and get wisdom. You cannot buy it online or find something that is online that resembles wisdom. It is beyond us. It is inaccessible. Now, before we go on to the answer, the third part of the poem, we need to stop for a moment here, reflect, because what do we mean, and what does the Bible mean when it says that wisdom is inaccessible? What is this wisdom? And why is it so extremely valuable? Why do we say, or what does the Bible say, it is inaccessible? If you think about all the things that man can do, we talked about that. All the discoveries, all the abilities, the ingenuity. Doesn't it show that man has wisdom? And the answer is no. And why not? Because of what wisdom is in the Bible. Wisdom, brothers and sisters, wisdom in the Bible is what we call practical wisdom. That means you're able to go through life dealing with the challenges that you meet in life without getting bogged down, getting stuck, thrown off course. You're able to understand why things happen from a different perspective. But because wisdom is that you're able to go through life without getting stuck, I said. And I take this from Proverbs chapter 3. In Proverbs chapter 3, also Proverbs is of course about life and the wisdom that we need in life. And Proverbs 3 verse 21, it says, "My son, do not lose sight of these. Those are the decrees of the Lord. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. They will be life for your soul and adornment for your neck. Then you will walk on your way securely, and your foot will not stumble." There you have it. That wisdom means that in the challenges of life, you're able to navigate through this without stumbling. If you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. You will not be afraid of sudden terror or the ruin of the wicked when it comes. That is wisdom. To be able to go through life without stumbling. And brothers and sisters, that is the wisdom that we need, because life has its challenges. Life has trials. Job had them. We have them. That fallen world that we live in also means that we deal with difficulties. That we at times have to make difficult decisions. How do I deal with this? How do I come through this? What will the end be? Because we live in this world, we can meet opposition and don't know how to deal with it. There can be trials, questions, and what you need then is wisdom. That insight that you need to make the right decision so that you can continue. We need that. Don't you have the feeling at times, what now? How do we go from here? How do we get out of here? We need wisdom. That's essential. Now, keep in mind also that this is part of Job's argument. Because what is the particular wisdom that Job is looking for? the particular wisdom that Job is looking for. Why would God do this to me? I can't understand his actions. I who am blameless, and yet he gives this to me. Why? And he asks this question while he's sitting there on the ash heap, struggling deeply. So this is not a question for Job, nice to talk about when you sit around the campfire, when you have a cup of coffee. No, this is a burning question for Job. Why would God do this to me, a child of his? Why would a righteous God cause this in my life? That's a question. No, the friends had their answers. And Job knew, no, that answer is wrong. But then? And brothers and sisters, again, that is something that we also can question. And that is the wisdom that we need too. Not just a matter of knowing facts and figures, but why would God do this in my life? Why would God do this in his church? It can be very painful. It can be very personal. And you can be very smart and know a lot of things, but do we understand why God does what he does in our lives, in this world? And the answer is no. We, with all our abilities, cannot in ourselves answer these ultimate questions. And that brings us to the last part of this poem, the answer, verses 23 and following. Verse 23, God understands the way to it, and he knows its place. It's so simple. It's so beautiful. It's so liberating. True wisdom can only be found with God. God understands the way to it, and he knows its place. And then the poem goes on to describe the creation and the beginning of this world, how he made everything according to his wisdom. You find similar thoughts also in Proverbs. He looked to the ends of the earth and he sees everything. He gave the wind its weight, apportioned the waters by measure. He made it agree for the rain. God, the creator, is also the creator of wisdom. And with him, wisdom is found. And I said that is liberating, because it means that wisdom is not elusive, that we do not have to go through life never knowing. The point is, it's not in us. It is in God. Man with all his capabilities can't find it. It comes from God. So to be wise, you have to know him. And knowing him in the sense of loving him, trusting him, relying upon him. And that's humbling. That's humbling for a human being. Because it indicates it's not in me, it is outside of myself. You have to go to him to receive it. Proverbs again, in chapter 2, verse 6 and 7. God, the Lord, gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. See, that is the wisdom. Watching over the way of his saints. And that is the wisdom that we need. And that is a wisdom, brothers and sisters, that puts to shame human wisdom. And that is what Paul speaks about in 1 Corinthians. where he deals with this, the wisdom, because some in Corinth were very impressed by human philosophy and human wisdom. And the Greek society also was impressed with wisdom and philosophy. And here comes the gospel. And then Paul writes, the Jews demand signs. Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles, but to those who are called Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than man, and the weakness of God is stronger than man. And that means this wisdom to which God understands the way is a wisdom that comes from above, is revealed to us, and that is a wisdom that is revealed to us in Jesus Christ. This morning, that bread and that cup, that were the signs and the symbols of God's wisdom, that the Son of God gave himself to reconcile us to God, to open the future, to take away the obstacles that were there in our relationship with God. And that is the wisdom that we need. That is the wisdom that God gives. And so a world in which we live without God will try to find wisdom, does its utmost, uses all its abilities, but it will not find it. The gospel, Jesus Christ, whom God made our wisdom, is needed. And a world that has rejected this wisdom, as our society has, and is suppressing the truth, it will be given over to its own foolishness by the punishment of God, and will be unable to find the truth. Romans 1. God gives that society over, 2 Thessalonians 2, to a spirit of delusion. Brothers and sisters, that is the world in which we live, and in which we have to hold on to what it says here. Wisdom comes from God, exists in God, and leads to God. And so chapter 28 looks back and says, you friends, and even you, Job, with all your talking, you haven't solved it, because this is the answer. You have to go to God. Now, that will happen. And so this chapter is also preparing what comes. Because if you look at the verses 24 through 27, notice that there, the poem refers to weather systems. The wind, the waters, the rain, the lightning, the thunder. And these are things that are beyond our control. That can be very worrisome to people when you do not believe in God anymore as the creator. And there are these things that you can't control. And it may seem as if chaos is ruling, and it becomes worrisome. Now also keep in mind that Job lost his children in a storm that destroyed the house. But what the text says here is, even in those things, there we know God is at work. Also behind them is God's wisdom. Even when it storms, literally or figuratively, in your life, God has not lost control. He knows what he's doing. and unfailingly he leads and directs. And that's what we need to know. And that prepares for what is coming in the book of Job. We don't go there yet. Because in verse 28, it is as if the Lord comes to you. Verse 28 is no longer poetry, it's prose. He says to man, so the Lord himself comes to us. He says, this is the lesson I want you to take home. Wisdom, that is the fear of the Lord. And that is equal to turning away from evil. That is understanding. So God comes to us and says, you want to be wise? You want to be able to deal with the things in life? This is what you need to do. Fear me. The fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And fear here means to stand in awe, to know your place before this God, to know him as who he is in his majesty. And Job will experience that. But here already the Lord says it. And when you know who he is in his character, then also you turn away from evil. You want to serve him. And that is wisdom. You want to keep his commandments because you love and you to take delight in doing his will. Lord, say 33. That is the fear of the Lord. It's interesting that at the very beginning of this book of Job, that is also how Job was introduced to us. Job 1 verse 1. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. That's exactly what it says here. Job, you are actually one of the wise because you fear me and you turn away from evil. And that brings us to our final conclusion here. Because notice that Job does not get an answer to his question. His question was, why? Why do you do this in my life? I fear you. I keep your commandments. And yet you do this. Why? Job doesn't get an answer. Because wisdom, to be able to go through life and to progress in life, is not that you're able to say, this is why it happened. That applies to Job. That applies to us. Wisdom is not that we're able to say, this is why. No, wisdom is to fear the Lord, to respect him, to trust him, to love him. That's the wisdom that we need. Also, a congregation. It's not the why that needs to be answered, but the who. Who is it that leads, that directs, that also brings these things into our lives? Do you know him? In Jesus Christ. Do you love him? And do you trust him? And so the Lord says to Job, he says to this child, and it can be you, it can be me, who is asking the question, why? The Lord is saying, don't go where you can't go. To find out why I do things. You're not my equal. Instead, go where you can go. And he takes you by the hand. And he leads you to his word. And said, there, this is who I am. Fear me. Live according to my word. And trust that even in the darkest times, I do not leave you alone, but I keep in charge of things. Moses said this also to the people of Israel when he gave the law to Israel. He said, Deuteronomy 29, verse 29, the secret things belong to the Lord our God. That's the question, why? Those are secret things that belong to the Lord. Don't go there. But the things that are revealed belong to us and our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law. The things that are revealed, that is what he has revealed to us in Jesus Christ, that through him he is our God and our Father, that he will provide, avert all evil, or turn it to our benefit. Fear him. You know him. Trust him. And walk in that wisdom. That is the wisdom that we need and that we receive out of grace. And in that wisdom, brothers and sisters, we too have to move on and go forward to the day when God will show his glory in all its magnificence. Amen.